to another video where I talk about things. It is Thursday, the 27th of November, 2025, and that means it is Thanksgiving for me and my fellow Americans. So, to you, if you are an American or celebrate the holiday, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Um, so, what's going on with the war here in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas and the so called Trump plan, the 20-point Trump plan that's been in effect now for about a month and a half, a little bit more, coming up on 2 months pretty soon. Well, Israel still is waiting on the return of the remains of two hostages that we know of. And those would be one Israeli and one Thai. Why it is that it's taking them so long to return them is a matter for Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other people, possibly, probably, to answer. And of course, they won't. They know it's their last bargaining chip. So for them, giving any kind of last leverage they have, holding on to dead bodies is not exactly a great piece of leverage, but that's what they're doing. And they're doing that for the precise purpose of not advancing to the next phase. They want to delay that as long as possible. They even want it to be dead. Right? They don't want the next phase to happen, because the next phase calls for them to give up their guns and remove themselves from power. And those that reject violence can stay in the land, and those that don't reject violence can leave through Egypt or whatnot. So this notion that somehow we're just to the end of the fighting is frankly a bit absurd. Because we know one thing about the Hamas that we can count on. They intend fully to remain in fighting form, as weak as it may be compared to the Israeli army. But they have absolutely no intention of going through the next phase of the plan. So they are delaying the return of the hostages in order to booby trap as many places as possible, rearm as much as possible, train new people, build new supplies, do everything they possibly can to get ready for what seems to be like the inevitable next round, and probably what we would call Hamas's last stand, unless there's some kind of weird intervention that prevents that from being a fait accompli, or a done deal, as you might say in English. Right? So why is Hamas doing this if they know they're ultimately going to lose the kinetic war? Right? Either they surrender and leave or stay in peace, or they get wiped out. So what possible use could they have to stay there and choose not to surrender like they agreed to do? Like, they should have already surrendered, right? There's no reason for that to be after the hostages were returned. They could have surrendered and still helped find the hostages. And by the way, if you think they're actually looking for the hostages, you've got another thing coming. Right? Dror Orr, who was returned a couple days ago, over the weekend or whatever, earlier in the week, and was identified successfully a couple days ago by the Israeli Forensics Institute. They knew exactly where he was, even though they said, no, we discovered him in the Nusayrat camp. in northern Gaza. He was dead when they brought him to Gaza. That means they knew exactly where they put him. And if he wasn't being stored in a refrigeration unit somewhere, and they, you know, whipped him out and put him in some place in Nusayrat or whatever, I would be surprised. But even if they didn't, they knew where he was. Right? They brought him there dead. They knew exactly. Multiple people obviously knew where he was. Obviously, that kind of information would have gone up the chain of command early on in the initial hours of the day of October 7th. That information would have been communicated to higher ups and higher ups and higher ups. And over the course of the next few weeks, you know, even though they denied knowing where everybody was, they said, "Oh, it's a big mess. We don't know where everyone is." It's absolute BS, because those hostages, dead and alive, were literally the only point of leverage that they had. So, hello, I see people saying hello, hi, and stuff. So there is literally no way that they didn't know where he was. And now we have a situation where we're still waiting on 2 hostages to come home. You know me? Okay, hello. Okay. I don't know what you're saying. Anyway, so basically Hamas is looking for Israel to start fighting with them again, because that is the only way that they can hope and beg and pray to get international legitimacy and support to break the deal. That's what they're counting on. That's why it's one of the reasons Israel is playing a very patient game. We're still waiting for 2 hostages. The thing is, the longer we wait, the more dangerous Hamas is. Right? Every day that goes by, they're getting better. You know, they're training their troops more. They're terrorists, whatever you want to call them, to be the terrorists. But you can call them troops if you want, even though they're not a regulated military, so they're not troops in any official, meaningful sense. But yeah, so that's kind of the long and short of it. Israel is basically forced into a position now where we kind of have to fight the bad guys as much as we don't want to. And that means there's probably going to be more people dead in Gaza. Anyway. Okay, is this coming or not? We'll see. Anyway, so that is the current status update. We're hoping for the best. We're planning for the worst, as always. And praying that good things will happen. Until the next one, folks. Wish you all the best. Love you. Peace from Israel. Shalom.